There are people who can walk into a room, say something real, and watch as the conversation moves right past them. Not because they were wrong, not because they weren't interesting, but because somewhere along the way, the world decided they weren't worth paying attention to. And the worst part? After long enough, they started to believe it too. This is the story of one of those people, and what happened when he stopped waiting for the world to change its mind. His name was Lucas. He grew up in a small town where everyone seemed to know everyone, except him. At school, he raised his hand every single day, and every single day the teacher looked right through him and called on someone else. Not out of cruelty, that was the hardest part. There was no villain in this story, just a boy who kept being skipped. At home, he became the quiet one, not because he had nothing to say, but because he'd learned, slowly, that saying it didn't seem to matter, and silence, when it goes unanswered long enough, starts to feel like the truth. So Lucas tried the only thing that made sense. He made himself useful. He stayed late to help clean up after class. He let people copy his work. He laughed at jokes that weren't funny because at least laughing together felt like existing. But something strange kept happening. The more he gave, the more invisible he became. Because people don't remember the one who helped. They remember the one who didn't need to. And Lucas was learning that the hard way. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Nothing special about the day. Lucas walked into a room where a group of people were figuring out who would take on a project. Someone looked up, glanced at him, then turned back to the group and said, "Is he even supposed to be here?" Not angry, not mean, just genuinely unsure if he existed in that space. 7 words. Lucas didn't answer. He just stood there for a moment, felt something in his chest go very still, and walked out. But something had shifted, not broken, shifted. Like a door that had been stuck for years had finally come off its hinges, not with a crash, but with a quiet, final click. The next day, Lucas didn't raise his hand, not because he didn't know the answer. He always knew the answer. But he was done performing for people who weren't watching. He stopped trying to be noticed, not because he gave up, but because for the first time he asked himself a question no one had ever asked him. What would I do if no one was ever going to see it? And the answer came faster than he expected. If you've ever felt like that, like you were doing everything right and still being overlooked, stay with this, because what happens next is the part most people never reach. Leave a like, subscribe, and keep watching. There was an old workshop at the back of his neighbor's property, unused, full of dust and forgotten tools. Lucas asked if he could use it. The neighbor shrugged and said, "Sure," mostly because he didn't think the boy would actually show up. But Lucas showed up every day after school. He started making things, small things at first. A wooden shelf that sat perfectly level, a latch that finally closed the way it was supposed to. Nobody asked him to make them. Nobody knew he was making them. And for the first time in his life, that felt like freedom. He wasn't building for applause. He was building because it was the first time he'd done something that didn't disappear when no one was watching. Days became weeks. Weeks became years. While the world kept moving, loud, rushed, competing for attention, Lucas was in the workshop, not hiding, building, and something no one expected began to happen. He started to trust himself, not in a dramatic way, in the small, quiet way that comes from finishing what you started 1,000 times in a row with no one watching. That kind of confidence doesn't announce itself. It just arrives. And once it's there, it doesn't need anyone's permission to stay. It started small. A neighbor mentioned that a shelf Lucas had made was better than anything they'd bought at the store. Then someone else asked. Then someone else after that. Word moved the way it always does when something is genuinely good, quietly at first, then all at once. One day, a man came to the workshop who needed something built right. He'd heard the name Lucas. He didn't know much about him. He left 3 hours later having offered Lucas more work than he could finish in a month. And the people from school, the ones who'd looked through him, started saying his name like they'd always known it. Years later, Lucas walked back into a room that once made him feel like he didn't exist. People noticed him this time. Of course they did. Someone came up and said, "I always knew you had something in you." Lucas smiled, nodded, said thank you, and meant none of it. Not because he was bitter, but because he realized something standing in that room. Their opinion of him had never been the problem. His opinion of himself had. They didn't start seeing him differently. He did. That's the part no one talks about. It was never about waiting for the world to come around. It was about becoming someone who no longer needed it to. The work didn't make him visible. The work made him indifferent to invisibility. And that is the whole lesson. So, if today you feel invisible, if you feel like your effort lands on deaf ears and the room always seems to talk around you, good. Because that might be exactly where it starts. Not when the world finally notices you, but when you stop needing it to. When what you build in the quiet becomes more important than the applause you never got. That's when everything shifts. If this story meant something to you, leave one word in the comments: seen. Not because everything is perfect, but because now you understand.